My name is Matt Williams, and I'm the Business Services Specialist at the Addison Public Library. Today, you are joining us for a Grow with Google workshop on Negotiate Like a Pro. Just a few housekeeping things. This program is being recorded. The recording will be shared with all registrants probably within the next week or so, and it will be able to be accessed on our YouTube channel. We are currently using a Zoom webinar format if you're joining us on Zoom. So please use the Q&A function for any questions that you have. I will get to all of the questions at the end of the presentation part of it, just so I will be able to see all of the questions that come in. If you are joining us on our Twitch stream, please feel free to put any questions that you have in the Twitch chat, and we have staff members who are monitoring that as well, and they will relay any questions through that chat to me. So let's go ahead and get started. So this program is about an hour long, and we're going to go over teaching you about the art of negotiation, which includes what it means to negotiate, why it is useful, and most importantly, how to negotiate. We will also discuss factors that affect your ability to negotiate effectively, such as biases and discrimination. We will also give you some ideas for building your confidence in the art of negotiation. And then we'll research a situation that you might negotiate and organize your notes into a digital document through Google. We can go over that briefly. And finally, I'll give you a quick assignment, some homework that you can do to continue to practice your negotiation skills after this workshop is over. So let's jump in and discuss what negotiation is, why we negotiate, and how to negotiate. So what does it mean to negotiate? Negotiating is when two or more people reach an agreement on a topic of discussion, a contract, or a price. Usually one of those people has the upper hand or the power in the discussion, and the other person is advocating for themselves to get a fair deal. Now, negotiation does require compromise, and someone might not get exactly what they want out of the negotiation. But in the end, both parties or both people need to agree to the solution of the negotiation. Now, negotiations don't have to be hostile or leave one person feeling slighted or wronged. The agreement that reached should be advantageous to both parties. So that is a lot of theory when it comes to negotiation. So let's talk specifics. So what are some things that you can negotiate? The first thing most people think about when they hear the word negotiate is your annual salary. Now, for example, when interviewing for a new job, the hiring manager offers a salary to the candidate, and the candidate has to decide whether to ask for more money or how they can make the case that they deserve that. Then in turn, the hiring manager must decide whether the additional costs make sense for the business. So negotiating the salary for a new job is important, but there are a lot of other things that may be negotiable. So you might also want to negotiate the hourly rate. So if you're an hourly worker, you can maybe negotiate your hourly rate. You can negotiate a raise, which is an increased salary or hourly rate for the existing job. Or in other terms, you can negotiate other terms of the job offer. So like vacation time or sick time, flexible hours, remote or hybrid work, a signing bonus, or maybe even reimbursements for expenses like college tuition, childcare, relocation, or commuting. When it comes to any sort of work negotiation, especially when you're looking for a new job, we always say to try to negotiate something. If they're not willing to budge on the salary or your hourly rate, try to see if they might be able to give you an extra week of vacation or an extra sick time or something like that. When you have the job offer in front of you, a lot of people sometimes also forget too that as the person who is seeking the job, you also have the advantage because the employer wants you over any other candidate that they interviewed. So there is a particular reason that they want you over however many people applied. So that gives you the upper hand in that negotiation a little bit as well. So let's talk about some personal negotiations that you may have experienced in your life. So the cost of a major purchase, like a house or a car, those costs are also negotiable. Or you might be able to negotiate a fee for a service that you need or a service that you provide, like those charged by general contractors, freelance writers or designers, mechanics, and lawyers. So you may be able to negotiate some of those fees as well. And lastly, some other areas you might not have known that you could try to negotiate are things like your credit card interest rate or your rent. And of course, you can negotiate on smaller purchases like secondhand furniture, or you can maybe even try on a monthly gym membership fee. You can try to negotiate things like that. I will say when it comes to the gym memberships, it works better for like the single owned gyms, not necessarily like a corporate owned gym. Those fees tend to be set in stone on a corporate gym, but if it's like one owner, one location, or a couple locations, you might be able to negotiate those as well. Okay, so next we're going to talk about how different situations, we're going to talk about many different situations in the workshop, but notice that negotiating isn't always about money. It can also be about time, benefits, and quality of life. So keep that in mind as you go into any situation when you need to advocate for yourself. So for example, in salary negotiations, there may be extenuating circumstances for why a potential employer can't meet your requests, like strict pay bans or budgetary limits. So that's when it comes in where they might be a little bit more flexible on other terms of the offer, like a work from home situation or flexible hours or even retirement benefits potentially, especially if it's a job where you are getting a 401k and the employer doesn't match, you might be able to negotiate the percentage of match that your employer does. So this kind of concept also applies to other situations too. So maybe your gym can throw in a free massage or a monthly smoothie, even if you can't offer a better monthly rate. So now your next question might be like, why should I negotiate? Just the general why. So negotiations can be uncomfortable conversations, and even with the best tactics, you might not get what you ask for, but they still are really important to attempt. So the obvious reason for salary negotiation is that you negotiate a higher salary. You'll get more money. That's true, but it's also a little short-sighted. It's not just about this particular job. So according to research done by Carnegie Mellon University, people who don't negotiate their first job offer earn $1 to $1.5 million less over the span of their careers. And this source comes from NPR. And they could have made up that money if they just did a simple negotiation, or that might be a little bit less of a range. So why is that the case with this? Because when you get promoted in your job later on, or even if you move to another company, your first salary sets the standard to your next salary is measured against. And it could just be in your own mind as well. That it was like, well, I was making $15 an hour at this job. This job is offering $18 an hour. That's more money. I'm gonna go there. But if you negotiated at your first job and you started out at $18, you feel more confident to then maybe negotiate up to 20 in that next job. Yeah, so that acts as like a mental benchmark for you. So there are 4 steps to negotiating. So step 1 is to do your research. Now, the best way to prepare going into any negotiation is to research ahead of time. Now, for example, if you're going to negotiate a starting salary at your new job, you need to know what other people in that role are making. So on average, just on an on average basis, so that you have a baseline number in mind when you go into that negotiation. You can find this information in various ways. So you can start with just a general online search, and you can find salary data provided by HR managers or from employers who anonymously post their salaries on websites like Glassdoor or salary.com, or even Indeed and PayScale. Or you can check websites such as the US Bureau of Labor Statistics or onet. Onet Online. You can check there as well, as they provide information on salaries and even other training opportunities as well if you need to upskill. It's most importantly, it's most important when you are doing these searches to use the job title, location, and experience. Because, for example, a librarian might make a totally different salary in California than they would in Illinois, and that's just because of cost of living. So you kind of want to see in the area that you're applying for the job, generally how much is that position making. You can also ask others in the field. So perhaps you know someone in the field, like a friend or a colleague, um, and you know that discussing salary is uncomfortable. So asking for a range might be a way to take the pressure off. And finally, make sure your roles are comparable. So your experience and your educational background is important here too. If you have 6 years of experience and you're comparing yourself to someone who who has had the role for 12 years, you might be bringing different skills to a potential employer. So the pay might be different. For someone with 6 years of experience, it might be making a little bit less than the 12 years experienced person, but at least then you get somewhat of a decent range that you can then use for your negotiation. Similarly, if you're looking for a new apartment or want to negotiate the rental price, find out what comparable apartments are going for in that area. So you can find this information on real estate websites by talking to listing agents or property management companies, and also by asking friends who might live in the area. So once you have a salary or a rental price in mind, figure out what you would like to ask for. So the next step is to clarify your goal. What do you want out of this negotiation? Do you want a raise? Do you want a new job title? Do you want a better price on what you're looking to buy? When you've determined exactly what you're negotiating for, it's easier to focus on the actual process. It's important to break down your goal into 3 categories. So the first category, what is your ideal outcome? In other words, what is your ideal salary or rent or monthly fee based on the research you've done? Remember, this should be an attainable outcome based on the numbers that you've found online or heard from colleagues. The next one is, what is your bottom line? What is the lowest amount you're willing to accept for the job, or the highest amount you're willing to pay for your rent? Now keep this number to yourself, but have it in the back of your mind during the process. Your bottom line should be an amount you're happy with, but one that will make you feel that one, excuse me, pardon me, one that it will be happy with, but not one that will make you feel resentful. Use your own expenses as your guide. You don't want to agree to a number that will force you to look for another job with a better salary in 6 months. So make sure that number fits into your personal budget. And lastly, what is your plan B? So in other words, if you don't get what you want, what will you ask for or do instead? Now, let's say you want to negotiate a salary, but the hiring manager says that that's what they pay every person in the title and the level of experience, or they're acting within a strict salary band. As long as that number is something that you're okay living with, what's something else that you might negotiate for? Or if it's not something that you can accept in your budget, are you okay with walking away? Which we will talk about in a little bit as well. So here's two good options for your backup plan. One is asking for add-ons. Now, what is something else that will help improve your quality of life? For a job, you might want more vacation time. That is a perfectly reasonable thing to negotiate if they hold firm on the salary. Or 1 day per week working from home, if that's possible in your industry. There's also tuition reimbursement, childcare expenses, commuting costs, retirement matching like 401k matching, a signing bonus, and more. But don't try to ask for everything all at once. That's why you want to create a backup plan ahead of time. Now be sure to come prepared knowing all the things that you want, and think about what your must-haves are from the list. Consider what is most important to you after the best possible outcome. Now, for a new apartment with a non-negotiable rent, maybe you can ask the landlord to throw in free internet access, or if there's a backyard or a rooftop terrace, maybe you get access to that. Something else you could consider asking for is a contingency. Now, if you're asking for a raise at your current job, your manager might want to tie it into some specific performance. So in other words, if I achieve this goal, then I will get this reward. Now, for example, you might need to acquire a certain number of clients, reach a sales goal, or meet another benchmark that makes sense for your company, and then ask your manager to reevaluate. At a new job, they might be willing to let you work from home 1 day a week after you've been employed there for a year or 6 months, or after your probationary period. This way, they have an opportunity to evaluate your productivity first. Now, decide whether this is an acceptable outcome for you. So similarly, maybe a new landlord would agree to you getting a dog after you've paid rent on time for 6 months. Now, on the other hand, if you don't get what you want, whether it's your ideal salary or flexible schedule, understand that you may need to walk away from this offer. So once you have your goal in mind, you can move to the next step, which is emphasizing the benefit to them. Now, in this step, instead of focusing on what makes you a unique candidate, you might want to describe how the other person will benefit. Now, for example, if you're vying to rent a new apartment, you might want to tell the landlord how, as an employed professional, you always pay your rent on time, or maybe you're less likely to move after the first year because you've settled into the area and have ties to the area, which could save the landlord a headache of having to list the apartment again and again and again. So in other words, demonstrate what the win-win offer is. You both will be better off if you can compromise and come to the agreement. Now, another example. Now, say you're asking your boss if you can go to work, to go back to work from home, back to working from home part-time. Instead of explaining that you want the flexibility to pick up your kids from school at the end of the day, emphasize how much more productive you are from your home office, where your coworkers can't stop by and chat anytime. You can make it clear that if you're given this benefit, you'll produce better work for your team and the company overall. Now, the same goes for getting that lease or securing the contract on the service. Perhaps if your contractor can agree to a slightly better deal on today's project, you'll hire them again in the future. Now, you may need to do a little research to find out how the negotiation will benefit the other person. Now, for example, if you're negotiating working from home privileges, you might need to track your productivity for a couple of days in and out of the office. Or you might need to figure out who else might be competing with you, or might be competing with you for the apartment after you've gotten it. Okay. Now, finally, the last step is supporting your points with data. Your research on typical salaries in the area should give you enough data to support your salary request in the negotiation. but you might want to include other data like the value you add. Now, for example, you increase subscriber retention by 50% and you acquired 3 new clients every month of the last year, or you wrote an additional 2,000 words on the day that you worked from home. Any sort of metric that you can add to your job to show the value that you bring is going to be crucial for that. Now, if you have a detailed resume, you may already have these statistics. Now, as another example, if you're looking to purchase a home, you can provide the owner with a letter showing that you are pre-approved for the mortgage and can afford it. And this way, when you put in the offer, it tells the seller that you are likely to follow through with the closing, which may give them peace of mind. So now let's talk about let's discuss bias and how it works against you. So the first bias that we're going to go over is implicit bias, which can affect you during the negotiation process in a lot of ways. So implicit bias is the prejudice that someone has, but they're not aware of. We'll talk mostly about bias in salary negotiations here because that's where the studies have been done. But bias can be present in any type of negotiation. So let's start with gender bias. A commonly repeated statistic is that women earn less than men as a whole because they don't negotiate their job offers. So why is that? Because stereotypically, women are perceived as disliking confrontation. Now, this may be true to an extent, but it's more systematic than that. Research has shown hiring managers, both male and female, expect men to negotiate, but dislike it when women do, because women who negotiate are seen as aggressive. So even more insidious in hiring is racial bias. Now, there isn't as much research in pay disparity for people of color as there is for women in the workplace, but overall, there is a pay gap between Black and white employees. A series of studies from MIT showed that hiring managers expect Black applicants to negotiate less than white applicants. But after the interview process, the hiring managers reported that the Black job seekers negotiated more, despite white candidates negotiating equally. Furthermore, the Black job seekers ended up with lower starting salaries because they were perceived as pushier. Now, of course, these aren't the only forms of bias. Some people can demonstrate prejudices against others for their disability, sexual orientation, religion, and any other number of factors. So if you're a woman, person of color, or a member of another underrepresented group, how do you prepare for this kind of situation? First, and the most important thing is that you realize that it's not your fault. The best way to avoid this type of bias is to seek out companies that publicize equitable hiring practices. During the application stage, check whether the company is listed as an equal opportunity employer, or an employer that pledges not to discriminate against workers for their race, color, religion, sex, including pregnancy, gender identity, and sexual orientation, national origin, age, including 40 or over, disability, or genetic information. Now, by law, these companies can't ask you personal questions, like whether you have children during the interview process, including at the negotiation stage. Now, if an employer asks an outright bias question or makes you feel uncomfortable at any reason, it's a definite sign that you should walk away from the conversation. Another way to avoid companies with biased hiring practices is to network with colleagues with similar roles. That way, you'll have a better understanding of the company culture and the way management treats its employees, including their salary ranges. Now, again, the onus shouldn't be on you to change or meet narrow expectations. If at any time you feel discriminated against, you should leave the meeting. You can also file a claim with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Now, you do not have to be employed at that company to also file a claim. It can be a part of the hiring process or the salary negotiation process or any stage of engaging with that company, you can submit a claim. So the best way to improve your negotiation skills is to practice. So that's what we're going to do now. So it's your turn to prepare the negotiation at home. So first, let's answer the question, when do you negotiate? Now, it's important to choose the right time. So we've talked about negotiating salary, but when does this happen? It's not wise to try to negotiate your salary during the first interview with the company, unless the hiring manager brings it up. So wait until they've offered you the job before you start to talk salary. Don't wait too long either. So if you've already signed the contract, it's usually too late. So you want to choose the right opportunity. So keep in mind that not every job offer or rental agreement is meant to be negotiated. Now, for example, some companies hire a group right out of college and pay them the same salary. In real estate, some years are buyers markets and some years are sellers markets. If you're trying to buy a home at a time when there are a ton of houses for sale, you'll probably not have good luck negotiating. If there only is one house available that is coveted in the neighborhood, it will probably sell quickly. In that case, you probably don't have the upper hand and it won't benefit you to negotiate. So remember, your goal is to buy the house in the situation. So you may need to make some compromises. Now, finally, make the effort worth the payoff. You want to be respectful of the person you're negotiating with. When it comes to negotiating with a small business that might be struggling because of economic circumstances, use your best judgment. Don't haggle just for the sake of it. Be sure you're asking for something that you genuinely want. So now let's practice negotiating. First, decide what you want to negotiate. Pick something that has slightly higher stakes or is important to you, like renting a new apartment, buying a car, or asking for a raise at your current job. Now, the examples I'm going to use are about a new job offer, but feel free to substitute the information for what makes sense to you. So here's the scenario. So imagine you've been offered a job at a new company with a slightly better title than what you have currently. You're scheduled to meet with HR and discuss the terms, including salary and benefits. So how do you prepare to negotiate in this situation? To prepare for the negotiation, as we mentioned, you need research. Compiling this ahead of time will help you frame your conversation and give you the data you need to make your case. It helps to write down the research you find. So I'm going to go to show you creating a negotiation plan in Google Docs, but you can use any word processing application or even a good old pen and paper. Now, one benefit for a digital document is that you can have access anywhere you are from any device, like your smartphone, that you can review minutes before your meeting. So in your browser, you're going to open Google Docs and start with a blank document. Alternatively, you can type in the web address docs.new into your Chrome browser. And then you're going to want to give your document a title, such as negotiation research. And then you're going to want to record the key details. For a salary negotiation, include information about you and your current job, like your title, location, years of experience, level of education, and the company size, including your current salary. Then record your related accomplishments in the document, including everything that demonstrates that you'd make a difference to the team or to the new company. So you want to think about what your unique value is. So you're going to use bullet points to organize your notes. Now, if you're negotiating a salary, think about the information you need to record your scenario. For example, if your negotiating price is excuse me, for example, if you're negotiating the price for a used car, do the research on the value of the vehicle based on its make and model, the year it was manufactured, and how many miles are on it. So how do you get that information? So the way that most people are going to go for that information is through a quick Google search. That's most people's starting point. So start by researching typical salaries for the title you're aiming for. Now, here's a tip. Use words like sales manager, Chicago, college graduate, mid-level, all to help narrow your search. And then you can go directly to a specific website like Glassdoor or PayScale to use those filters. Now, note that you may have to register to provide demographic information to search their data. Now, next, you want to add a new header to your document for research about the potential job offer or other situation you're preparing for. Then you fill in the details you find online. So record the average salary for the position based on your research, plus any other typical benefits you might want to include. For instance, maybe you notice a lot of companies are offering signing bonuses or paid parental leave. Add those perks into your list as well. So now that you've done your baseline research, you can record your goals. Remember the three categories: the ideal or goal offer, your bottom line, and a backup plan or contingencies. Now type each one into the document. Now here's what it would look like for a salary negotiation. For your goal offer, put the highest salary you think is plausible, but also realistic. If the average you're seeing in your industry is $55,000 a year, expecting an offer of $85,000 might set you up for disappointment. So then type in your bottom line offer. What is the absolute least amount you're willing to accept, all things being equal? Your benefits and contingencies will likely affect the number somewhat, but it's okay to have a minimum requirement. You don't need to undersell yourself or your abilities. And finally, your backup plan. This is where you'll record anything that you would accept as an alternative to your dream salary. So start a bulleted list, then type anything that comes to mind, including extra paid time off, an upgraded bonus structure, reimbursement for your commuting expenses like train tickets or gas, remote work options, a better title, or a flexible schedule. Now remember, these contingencies are about your quality of life. Think about the benefits that will make your life better, but don't cost the company as much as an increased salary would, or expenses that come out of different budgets from the department than the salary budget. Now, if you're researching a different scenario, say negotiating rent on a new apartment, or your plan will look a little bit different. Now, you might even complete this exercise for something with lesser value, like an appliance or even clothing. Now, for example, here's how you would negotiate the cost of a washing machine and a pair of jeans. So the current situation, the washing machine is being sold in a store for $1,000. Your research online shows that at least 2 other stores have them on sale for $890. So the bottom line, you're willing to pay no more than $915. And the backup plan would be maybe the store will deliver the washing machine for free, so there's no delivery cost. Or maybe they can offer a discount on a matching dryer. Now consider what a reasonable contingency would be in this situation. So here's another example, this time a much smaller purchase. Here's the current situation. A pair of jeans is being sold in a store for $150, but you notice a small defect on one of the seams. So what's your bottom line? You're willing to pay no more than $125. And the backup plan, maybe the store will hem the jeans for you for free, which would then save you money on the tailoring cost. Now, keep in mind that you don't want to spend a ton of time researching a smaller purchase like this. Of course, saving $25 is an awesome outcome, but there's no need to research this for hours. If you can easily compare prices on your phone, that's really all the data you may need to make your point to the salesperson. So whichever negotiation scenario you've chosen, put your goal offer in bold type to emphasize it. Then highlight the two most important points in your backup plan so you can focus. So that's how you can focus your negotiation. Now, if these requests are standard with the offer or are met already, you can move on to something else on your list. Now, similarly, if there's anything that you frequently see listed on job postings as benefits, but are not important to you, consider listing these as well. Then you can strike through them. So depending on the company, you might be able to trade tuition reimbursement for regular travel expenses paid to industry conferences. So to find this document in the future, you will just sign into your Google account and then open Google Drive. Your research document is saved automatically and can be found in your recents folder on Google Drive. Okay, so now we're going to prepare for the conversation. So you've done your research, you're ready to go into the negotiation, and you're prepared to ask for a specific salary, rent, price, and defend your option. But negotiation isn't just about the numbers, of course. It's also a mental game. Now, many people, even those who know exactly what goal they want to meet, find negotiations nerve-wracking. That's why a lot of people avoid negotiations. But that's where the mistake lies. Just as you can prepare your conversation with data, you can prepare mentally too. So let's talk about how to prepare yourself mentally for the negotiation. So first, you want to list your talking points. You've done all this research, the research you prepared will go a long way in your discussion, but you'll need other talking points as well. So consider writing a loose script to begin the negotiation with. It doesn't need to be something you memorize or bring to the meeting, but outlining what you're going to say will, with some exact phrasing, will likely help you feel more comfortable when the meeting begins. So in a few minutes, I'll do some role playing and demonstrate how this conversation might play out, but feel free to use any of the sentences we use. So step 2, recognize your worst case scenario. It's okay to be a little uncomfortable with the negotiation process, but consider this. What is the worst that can happen to the negotiation? The worst case scenario for most people would be that the hiring manager rescinds the offer and laughs you out of the room. That's always possible, but it's highly unlikely, especially if your offer is grounded in research. And remember to the point that I made earlier when it comes to salary negotiation, the employer wants you in particular for some reason, rather than any of the other candidates that they interviewed. So they want you for some reason, they're not just going to rescind the offer right away. Right, so step 3, identify your nervous habits. When we're uncomfortable, we often change our body language or voice. Now think about what you do when you get nervous. Is it tapping a pen, picking your nails, speaking extra fast? If you aren't sure, ask a friend or coworker about your nervous habits. They may know. And lastly, write yourself an encouraging note to remember to breathe and slow down and refer to it during the negotiation, or bring a notebook to occupy your hands. It's okay to bring a notebook to take notes and during a negotiation, especially when it comes to salary or something like that. Bringing a notebook with you just so also then you can write down all the information that you need. So you've prepared your research and your mental game. So now it's time to negotiate. So let's go through a real conversation step by step. before you go into the meeting or start the phone call, take a moment to collect yourself. There's been a lot of research around how body language can affect your confidence. Before your negotiation, try breaking into your power pose. And you can try it now. So you can stand up straight, you can put your hands on your hips and hold your chest high. Take a couple of deep breaths. Feeling powerful in the moment before a negotiation can be the mental encouragement we need to start the conversation. It can't hurt to try it either. So then demonstrate confidence when you're in the meeting too. Be prepared, be aware of your body language. Sit up straight, make eye contact. You want to convey confidence, but you don't want the other person to feel attacked. Now, this is true even if you're negotiating over the phone. Nervousness and discomfort can often be heard in our voices as well. So then you have the conversation. Start by saying thank you for the offer or the opportunity. Make small talk if it makes sense in the situation. Then reiterate your interest in the focus of your negotiation. Now, for example, if you're negotiating a salary, start by thanking the HR manager for the job offer. Next, if you're feeling edgy or nervous, make a little small talk, especially if you never met the other person. A friendly chat can help establish some goodwill and diffuse the nerves. You might ask about the person's weekend or comment about the weather. It may seem silly, but showing genuine interest in the person builds a connection. Then you want to reiterate how much you'd like to join the team. You want them to know that you're genuinely excited about the job and want to reach an agreement that benefits everyone. So remember, this might be your future boss or HR manager, so you want to also make a good impression at this stage. So finally, be clear about what you want. If they emailed you a salary number ahead of time, then you're going into the conversation with what you want to ask next. Now, if they've only expressed interest in hiring you without giving you a number, let them take the lead. So let's do a little role playing. So now it's time to consider the offer. So once they've made the offer and told you about the salary, give yourself some time to think about it. Breathe deeply as you consider the offer and compare it to your research and the bottom line that you constructed earlier. It's a big decision that you don't need to make quickly. So then encourage them to speak first. You'll need a second to think about your next step at this point, but staying silent can sometimes lead the other person to make a better offer to avoid feeling uncomfortable. Now, silence also keeps you from seeming too eager to make an agreement. Now, if they make an offer that doesn't match your ideal number, you might pause and say something like, that wasn't what I was expecting based on my research. On the other hand, if they ask you what salary you're looking for, it's fine to respond with the question, well, what do you have budgeted for this position? Now, this might feel scary or uncomfortable, but the person you're negotiating with probably has a best offer in mind too. The goal is to get them to say it. So you can do that by using neutral language. Don't accuse anyone of trying to underpay or offend you. Demonstrate the value that you will bring to the table. Don't focus on what you think you deserve. Keep the language neutral and non-accusatory. Unless the hiring manager says something overtly sexist or racist or biased in any way, remain polite throughout the conversation. Now, it is true when you're negotiating with customer service agents or potential landlords as well. It is easy to become defensive when you think you're being overcharged or underpaid, but recognize that they're doing their job to meet a budget or work with constraints beyond their control as well. Now, you can still advocate for yourself while remaining cordial. So Now let's talk about your backup plan. So in any negotiation, there might be a time where you need to use your backup plan. If this is your first offer, if their first offer is firm, come back with your contingencies and see what you can get next. Now, finally, mentally prepare yourself for the idea that you might need to decline the offer and walk away. That's why you came up with a bottom line earlier in the research process. Now, if the company can't meet your minimum demands for whatever reason, it's okay to find something that works better for you. Now, for example, if the salary a company is offering won't cover the cost for childcare or rent, then it might not be a good option for you. The same goes for an apartment you're renting or a monthly fee for a service. If the cost is out of your budget, you don't need to put yourself into financial hardship. It's okay to look elsewhere for that job or apartment, even if that realization is profoundly disappointing. However, please remember that every decision and situation is personal. You know your needs best. So let's do a little bit of a recap. So we went through the 4 stages of a negotiation. So the first step is to do your research. The second step is to clarify your goal, your ideal number, your bottom line, and your backup plan. And step 3 is to emphasize the benefits to them. And step 4 is support your points with data. And some key phrases you might want to use in the conversation are you willing to be flexible on benefits or any other related subject instead? Because of my experience in education, dot, dot, dot. That wasn't what I was expecting based on my research. Now, what is your policy on, dot, dot, dot? And lastly, I really appreciate you working with me. So now that you have the tools to negotiate a major milestone like a job offer, it's time to practice your skills in the real world. But you don't need to go to a job interview to learn how to negotiate in real life. Your assignment and your homework after this workshop is to start small. Pick a low stakes situation, like a sales price on a pair of shoes, used furniture, a gym membership, or anything else with a flexible price. This is a great time of year where there are a lot of households that have garage sales. Garage sales are great places for to practice your negotiation skills. Because a lot of times people hosting the garage sales, they want to get rid of the stuff that they have in the garage sale. So you know that they want to get rid of something, they have something you want, you can negotiate the price. And it's kind of a little bit of an expectation at a garage sale that there's going to be some level of negotiation. So in something small like all of those examples, the cost to you is very minimal, but the practice of the negotiation is a great skill to have. And in these situations, it's okay if you end up walking away from the conversation because the cost, like I had mentioned, is not that big of a deal. So by starting negotiating small things, hopefully you'll get the experience that you'll need to experience the best outcome, getting exactly what you want. But if you experience the worst case scenario, you have to cancel the cable subscription or you walk away from that garage sale, it's not a life-changing event. So you'll get to try out the negotiation process without the repercussions and about asking for a raise or changing jobs. So it's always good to start small. So let's get started with that. So list a few potential scenarios or potential situations to negotiate. Now write a script and make the call. So in the comments or the Q&A section, tell me what you're planning to negotiate first. Now, after the conversation is over, reflect on the experience you might have had to record your impressions in that document that we had talked about earlier. Now, what are you proud of in that negotiation? What could have you done better? What surprised you? And try that again. So negotiate the next thing that's on your list. The more you do it, the more comfortable you'll get with the conversation. Then, when you are ready to ask for something major, you will be ready. So I know that was a ton of information that I talked about in a very brief period of time. So let's summarize what we covered in today's workshop. During this workshop, we learned what it means to negotiate, why negotiation is useful, and when negotiation is necessary. We discussed the basic steps to use when negotiating and factors that can affect your ability to negotiate effectively, like bias and discrimination. You learned how to prepare mentally so you have the confidence for that conversation. You created a document to record your research into potential situations you'd like to negotiate. And you included your goal numbers, your backup plan, as well as your talking points. You learned how to avoid bias in negotiations. We showed you negotiation in action with quick little role playing exercises and examples throughout. And finally, you received your assignment for practicing your negotiation skills in the real world. So thank you all for attending today's workshop.